Hi, my name is Chetna Kapasi, and I've been the program manager for the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm for the last 20-odd months. This is the Mayor's program to think about who is represented in our public spaces and who is not. What experiences, what histories, and what communities are given space to share their stories in London's public spaces, and for those who've been historically excluded. I guess many of us have been historically excluded, which is why we're here. One of the most impactful parts of the Commission work is the challenge and learning we've benefited from those on the ground, like Sadia and Everyday Muslim and other colleagues who are in the room today, who really do the work to tell Londoners stories that have historically been missing. And from the challenge and learnings, the support, platform, and amplification we have been able to give to many of these community-led initiatives through our Untold Stories program grant and our project like London Unseen that we did last year, and other community-led initiatives and projects. This project has been on a journey with the Mayor's Office and the GLA and the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm. I think someone will be speaking about that later, so I'll save that bit for a bit later. But it's been a long but slow and steady journey. I'm really proud that once again we are able to facilitate another community-led event here at City Hall, marking partition, following the first historic event last year in this very building. I would now like to hand over to Sadia Ahmed of Everyday Muslim, who alongside her amazing team have worked tirelessly to convene this space and communities and individuals such as yourselves around this experience over the last year or so. Sadia, I'd like to invite you to the stage. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Chetna, for the welcome, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So my name is Sadia Ahmed, and I'm the founder of the Everyday Muslim Heritage and Archive Initiative. Everyday Muslim is an archive project which collects interviews, photographs, and documents from everyday Muslims in Britain. From the collections of almost 200 interviews and several hundred photographs, we've created educational resources, videos, podcasts, exhibitions, informed academic research, and created heritage trails that highlight and foreground the history and experiences of Muslims in Britain over many centuries. Our goal is to provide a tangible connection between our community and its history, fostering a sense of belonging and understanding. All of the resources that we've created are freely and easily accessible on our website and also on all of our social media platforms. As Chetna mentioned, this time last year at City Hall, Everyday Muslim organised Partition at 75, and it was an event that was brought together to commemorate the 75th anniversary of partition. And we brought together academics, historians, authors, and community leaders to explore the living history of the partition of India in the context of the South Asian diaspora living in Britain, and also its historical significance within British history. We also started community consultations to gather ideas for a memorial for partition in London. And as you might have already seen, some of the outcomes of those are displayed at the back of the hall. The event marked a significant milestone as it was the first time that the subject of partition was discussed at City Hall. Its success gave us the impetus to apply for and be awarded a Make and Grow grant from the Mayor of London's Untold Stories Fund. The award has enabled us to design, research, and develop the initial concepts for the proposed memorial, and also produce a printed and digital heritage trail map which details the interconnected history of partition through the stories of influential figures, significant events, and key organisations that shaped a history between India and Britain. As some of you already know, this project was founded on my family's really personal connection to the partition, but also from the many stories that we've collected over the years from the South Asian community. These stories represent our shared histories and experiences. The story of partition is not a story or a history of the past, but one that is a living history that embodies our connection to people, physical places, language, food, faith, and culture. And it's inspiring a sense of belonging and home. Therefore, its legacy is very complex and it cannot be defined by one single experience or memory. Including young people in every aspect of this project has been really imperative to the ethos of our creating opportunities for future generations to learn of how history is not just about the past, but how it connects us to the present and how history is all around us. And even if it does not look like us, there's always something that you can connect to. Before Chetna returns to the stage to invite our first set of speakers, I'd like to invite Debbie to the stage. Debbie is Deputy Mayor of Communities and Social Justice, Dr. Debbie Weeks Bernard, who is also co-chair for the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm, and under whose leadership and championing of community-led heritage, it's been a really great source of encouragement for us and many, many other community leaders and community groups, and inspiration for the work that we've been doing for the past 12, 18 months now. Over to you, Debbie. Thank you.
It's really lovely to welcome you all to City Hall this evening. And I'm going to start just by doing a bit of a disclaimer. I'm rapidly losing my voice because I'm just recovering from flu. So if I'm not as sparkly as perhaps I usually am, that's entirely because I'm just getting over a bit of an illness. But I was determined to come to City Hall for this event today. And so, frankly, this event is what has got me out of my pajamas, because I've been in them for the past 2 days. And I really wanted to be here for this event for two main reasons. The first is that it's really important for us to have spaces and opportunities like we're having today to talk about, to reflect on, to remember partition. Many of you, hopefully, will have been at the partition conference that we held this time last year. It was the very first time that City Hall had ever held a partition conference, and therefore it was a very historical moment, and I was proud to be at that event. I was proud to welcome everyone and to speak on behalf of both myself and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. So many of you, hopefully, will have been part of the conversations which emerged out of that event. Some of you also, this may be your very first time at City Hall, and if it is, welcome to City Hall. We're really, really honoured to be able to host you here today. And so it's really important, it was really important, it is really important for me to be here, to be part of a set of conversations about an issue which is not just of importance to everyone in this room, and not just of importance to those of South Asian heritage across the diaspora, but it's something which is important to everyone because it's a part of British history. And that's why it's so important for us to have a moment and a space and an opportunity to talk about, reflect on, and discuss partition, because it was both a violent and difficult and traumatic moment, but it's also a historical moment, and it's something that we should be discussing in our classrooms and should be discussing at our dinner tables. We should be discussing it everywhere, but we know that that is not something that is happening, and that's why it remains important for us to have opportunities like this, to have these discussions. The second reason that I really wanted to come along to the event today is I wanted to say goodbye to Chetna. So Chetna has opened the event, and Chetna is the programme manager, as she said, for the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm, which I co-chair with Justine Simons. And today is Chetna's last day. And so not only was it this event that got me out of my pyjamas, it was also Chetna And I wanted to be able to come and say goodbye to her, but also to thank her for all the work that she's done for the Commission, because she has worked and acted with such humility, such integrity. She has shared her experience and her expertise with us, and we're going to miss her terribly. So could you please just join me in saying a huge thank you to Chetna Kapasi. I love taking the opportunity to embarrass people, because I know that she probably wasn't expecting that. I also just want to say a huge thank you to Sadia, who is the founder of Everyday Muslim, who you've just heard from. At that event last year, which she and her team curated, she was able to open up a really set of important but difficult conversations about partition. And that event concluded with a range of questions, one of which was, what might be the best way to memorialize partition? What would a memorial look like? And so this event today is part of that journey towards trying to answer that question, because it's a difficult question to be able to answer. And what Sadia and her team, having successfully got a grant from us to do some really important on this issue, what they've set out to do is to engage in community conversations, consultations, speaking to individuals with expertise and lived experience about what they think a memorial to partition should look like. And this is part of that process. And it's part of a really important journey. And I'm really grateful to her and to her team for enabling us to be part of that journey that she has been going on, to think about what that looks like. And that commission that I mentioned that I co-chair with Justine Simons is principally about trying to think about the way that we memorialise, we remember, we mark all of the events which make up our experiences, which make up London, which make up the UK. And whilst we are in an incredibly diverse, a beautifully diverse city, and it's something that you'll hear the Mayor talk about every given opportunity, it's something that we're all deeply proud of, it still remains a city in which we don't see ourselves reflected. And that's what the Commission is seeking to rectify. And that's what I know Sadia and her team are seeking to address as well. So the last thing that I will end by saying is this. It's really important for us to be able to do this work, but we can't do this work without individuals like yourselves, because it's really important that whatever we seek to do to reflect diversity in all its richness across our city, it has to be something that you as Londoners care about, something that you as Londoners think are the best ways to reflect both yourselves and everyone else around you. And so I'm really grateful to you for giving up your time today to be part of this conversation, because the Mayor of London can't have that conversation by himself. As commissioners of the Diversity for the Public Realm, we can't have that conversation by ourselves. We have to have that conversation with all of you. And so I'm grateful to you for coming along and being part of that conversation, and also being part of our continuous attempt to make sure that issues like partition remain part of the public narrative, because rectifying silences or exclusions about people's histories or stories will never happen by itself. It takes action. It takes people coming together, as we're doing tonight, to have a conversation. And it takes us working with all of you to help us to make that happen. So thank you for being part of that conversation. Thank you, Sadia, for the work that you're doing. Thank you, Chetna. I'm going to miss you hugely. And thank you to the teams for this work. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Debbie. Really touched. Thank you. I don't often blush, but yeah. I'm going to change the program up slightly because we're waiting for one of our speakers. So we're going to invite the team who've been working on the concepts you see at the back of the room. So this bit's called Visualizing a Memorial. So can I please invite Aisha Husayem, sorry, I've pronounced it wrong, and Rav, I believe you're coming up as well. So this bit of research and the sort of visualizations have come from in-depth community research across all faiths and experiences, including getting ideas from guests at last year's event, and hopefully from all of you today as a continuation. And also, what path should a memorial take? What should it look like? The two concept designers, come on stage, will describe the process visualizing the 5 initial designs following these consultations. So Aisha, Huzaima, and Rav. Before I forget, if you're on social media, tag at Everyday Muslim Heritage, and the hashtags we're using are partition and remembering partition. So if you are on socials, do feel free to use those tags and hashtags to you guys. So should be that, yeah. There you go. Okay, so 4.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, hi, we're Aisha and Kaz, and we were sort of tasked by Sadia to really kind of play with the idea of what a memorial concept should be. So we'll just introduce ourselves a little bit. So my name's Aisha, and I work in urban design, and I have a background in architecture and historic urban environments. And I was introduced to Everyday Muslim because I was previously working on a project with Sadia for the One Eid Festival and looking at exhibition design. And I thought this project was really important, so I came on to do that.
And my name is Kazema, and I have a background in interior architecture and an interest in adaptive reuse and community engagement. I've also been really invested in this project, and I've enjoyed working on it, and I'm really excited to see how it develops post us. So this is our task. So when Sadia reached out to us and gave us the brief, she had a couple of key points that she wanted the memorial to envision. So a memorial, the brief that she gave us was that it should capture the partition's emotions, its experiences, and its historical significance. It should invoke empathy and educate visitors, and it should also symbolize unity and resilience of the survivors and also the communities that came out from it. The memorial should also be engaging and interactive with the visitors.
So Rav is just going to speak a little bit about the context of the project.
I'll swap over with you for a second. So this will be the second presentation, and the map you were given upon entry is one aspect of an output of the project, and it's called Remembering Partition. And I think I remember working with Sadia, Mansi, Abdul, and some others to try and even map how do we start in London. And for some of us, we're already practitioners doing our history stories. So we have Abdul from Muslim History Tours. I do a little history of the Sikhs, and Mansi does the Empire Tour. So Sadia kindly invited us in, and we started to explore workshops about how would we curate a partition tour on the streets of London. And that's the map you have either with you in your hands. So I think we're going to have a second presentation on that by a different team. So I'm going to leave that bit for the next presentation. I'm going to hand you back for the next slide.
Cool. So this was really our approach to the project. We were really looking at the design as a circular approach and really trying to pull in inspiration and information at various stages of the process, looking at community surveys, collecting ideas, developing and testing, and just keep on going round and round until we kind of produce the best results possible.
And for the community engagement, I'd firstly like to thank all of the feedback that we received, both in the community surveys and the feedback, but also the feedback from the advisory board. That was really valuable information that we collected. Something that we found from all of that information is that 98% of the public think it's really important to commemorate the communities that came out of partition and the communities that are affected. We also found that 55% of the public are really in encouragement of a memorial park, a memorial garden, and also 59% of the public really want a museum or educational facility.
So taking all this community engagement and participatory data, we distilled it into these 5 key themes, pulling out common concerns and desires from the community, and used these 5 key themes to really help us inform and push the design forward. So the first one was for the design to be participatory in design and nature. So that includes involving the community as part of the design process, but also as the final output. So what does it mean to the community?
Yeah. So we also want to ensure that it was of relevance to the South Asian diaspora, so making sure that we have a specific target demographic and making sure that they were who we were working with and working for.
It was about the potential for ongoing significant impact, so what it means to not only the current generation, but also future generations to come.
Another key point that we found was that we needed the memorial to be resilient to vandalism and be mindful of backlash. There were a lot of concerns about the political climate now and maybe in the future, so we need that to be mitigated in the design as well.
And inclusive of all shared history. So it was really important for the design to encourage the telling of untold stories and giving space for more marginalized communities. So this was kind of a brief look into the idea development that we were doing. We were really kind of playing with a lot of ideas of how can a memorial be like looking at history, how can it, the impact be amplified, what physical elements could be impactful. We explored a lot of different ideas, both digital and physical. There were ideas of AR spaces, of murals, of gardens, of exhibition spaces, and really feeding these ideas back into the advisory board and getting their feedback to progress the design further.
Yeah, so like Aisha said, once we presented these ideas to the advisory board, it became really clear that we needed to have a series of key proposals, but also supporting satellite sites. So that just helped us just accommodate and reach out to as many people as possible. So the three key ideas that we had were a pavilion, a museum, and a garden. And the supporting satellite designs are a listening garden, a traveling rickshaw, and a telephone box.
Cool, so I'm just going to go through the first design. So it was a shadow pavilion. So the ideas for all of these are at the back. So if you want to have like a more in-depth look at them, you can refer to the boards at the back of the room. But the shadow pavilion, the idea of it is the roof is designed along the partition lines. So there are gaps in the roof. So when the sun hits it, the shadows of the partition lines are projected into the interior of the pavilion, really creating an impactful environment. And the framework along the sides is based with planting boxes, so the pavilion will naturally evolve and change with the time and with the community. As the community nurture it, there's spaces for smaller intimate gatherings and spaces for larger events, and there's a lot of scope for development here.
Our secondary proposal was this community garden. So here we took the shapes that were from pre-colonial regions of the subcontinent and had them extruded at different levels. So had columns for the plants, also planters, and also seating at the bottom. And it was really important that we played with the texture and the materiality of each element, making sure that it could be derived from the subcontinent, highlighting key carving or key textures from the subcontinent. We also thought it was really important for this proposal to be in custodianship of the communities, so that way it could grow and evolve over time as well. And our final design is the museum. So this museum space will have a permanent exhibition, a library, and also a flexible gallery that can shift with community needs and work with South Asian artists that can rotate and highlight key work. So the shape of the museum, was really important that we had concentric circles so that intimate information and intimate talks could take place in the center, and wider context and wider information could be shared on the outskirts of the project. It's also important that the boards were at different levels, the information and the design were at different levels, so that it could be inclusive, not only to children, but also to people in wheelchairs. Maybe they can't reach the heights. So it's really good to be inclusive in the design.
Yeah, so these are the three satellite designs. One of the pieces of feedback that we got was, so wherever the memorial is chosen to be located, it really misses out basically the rest of the UK where it is not located. So it's how can we increase the outreach of the project. So it was looking at these smaller proposals that could be placed, maybe multiples of them or around the UK to increase the outreach of the project.
So our first design is an immersive sound garden. So obviously we know that the current climate, although it's warming up, it can't really support the flora and fauna of the subcontinent. So it would be really good to have these conservatory pods that help those plants grow. Those plants could release scents, could be textures, could be smells from the subcontinent, and create a really peaceful and reflective environment. We also thought it'd be great if there was a scope for audio playback of the oral histories that Sadia's team, and also that could be collected from another satellite project, really creating a space of healing and reflection.
So the second design is a rickshaw classroom. The rickshaw is iconic to the kind of South Asian subcontinent, yeah. And it's so iconic that we thought it just moving around the UK would really bring awareness to the project. We thought that it could have projections on the back, it could store literary information, and it could be used as a moving classroom, so it could visit schools or host events, and it could really be a point of gathering to teach and educate about partition. And the third proposal is a recording telephone box. So alongside the walking trail that you'll hear about later, we thought that some of these phone boxes could be repurposed and painted in the style of South Asian cargo trucks. And this would make them extremely distinguishable. And also having them along the walking trail would really tie in that element of the project, as well as being a place to collect valuable oral histories that could otherwise be lost.
So we just want to say thank you for your time, but also just to highlight that this isn't the end of the project. There are no definite ends here. We want to keep developing, especially with the feedback that you give today and further community engagement. We want to keep developing, make this project as best as it can be and reach as many people as it can. And we're really excited to see how the project develops over its time.
We're just going to pass over to
To myself. You want to come myself? Yeah. Thank you. Here we go. Look, I've got the 25-minute speech ready now. No, it's all right. So look, I've been asked to do closing comments by Sadia. So what this section is moving the story from last year, doing the community engagement, and actually doing what I get paid to do in my real job, which is the Royal Institute of British Architecture doing a vision study, taking the engagement work, taking the feedback and starting to develop a vision, and then doing a concept design. And actually, I've been part of this project for a few months, invited by Sadia, and I was given the menteeship for these two stars who've done really well today. Their names are Aisha, Kazima, there's Gia at the back who's helped out on my side of the project, Sarah, Samra, and Kizra. They're all young people. I'm now at a stage where I'm being invited to be a mentor on this, and I'm incredibly proud of these two because they've listened, they've gone through and they've done the work, and they've actually done a piece of work on the back there that I have to pay a lot of money for in the real world. So I don't know what their fees were and what they were, but I think they've got a bright future in this space. This is their Instagram tags. So please do, if the one thing you do is just follow these two on Instagram, watch their story. This is where it started because Sadia gave them an opportunity. So I didn't want to really cover everything else that they've already covered. I just said, look, I've enjoyed thoroughly working with them for the last few months, and I'm looking forward to the next stage of the project. Reba goes to stage 2, 3, concept becomes detailed becomes technical, and then you construct. Hopefully that's the journey, Sadia, you're on with this project. But for the vision study, thank these two. Thank you. That's everything.
Does anyone have any questions they want to ask this wonderful team that have put these ideas together? Because it feels like, I don't know, it needs to be open up there for questions. We've got a mic roaming around, I think. We'll just grab this one.
Hello. Hello. My question, it would be, what was your biggest challenge in trying to come up with a few concepts, and what challenges did you see along the way?
So one of the biggest challenges we had was the amount of feedback that we got and the varying levels of this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what we want. Having to collate all of that and think, okay, what are the 3 primary projects that we could take from this information? I think that was our biggest challenge, because otherwise we could have just kept developing. Oh yeah, this is great. Maybe we can use this. Maybe we can use that. It's trying to rein it back in and have 3 really good proposals that reach out and target as many people as possible. Yeah. Anything to add?
No,
Yeah.
I think Kaz got it. It was a lot of stuff that we were given, and it was just really about, okay, so how can we, because we had 6 weeks to do the project, so it was like we could have just kept going, but how do we have something to show you guys today that's feasible?
I just want to say congratulations first. It just looks fantastic. So testimony to all your hard work. Do you know what I saw? I loved the cargo, the trucks from South Asia. Amazing. Like, I'm fascinated by those, full stop.
Yeah.
So to see those roaming around in the UK is going to be absolutely spectacular. Do you know what I just had a vision of suddenly? On the buses, the cargo design on one route in each town, we could have it on a bus. Why not? You know?
Definitely. It will be, because of the scope of the projects and the translational skills of it, not skills, but the translational design of it, really great to, we can start with the rickshaw, we can start with the telephone box, but there's always ways to raise awareness, and the designs can always be posted on the buses as well. Yeah, really great feedback.
Hi, JJ from Wilma. Just wanted to ask you about the 3 satellite designs. So, is the project kind of overall being supported by the kind of Mayor of London's office? So because I noticed that you've mentioned that you want to take it out in the UK. Is there scope for it to be sustained nationally longer term as a UK-wide project, or is it more the focus has to be in London? I was just curious.
So at the moment, I think we're being funded by the Mayor of London's Untold Story programme. Obviously, as it grows and as it develops, we'd love to get more funding and therefore reach out further across the UK. We envision it to be across the UK, and really hope that that's a possibility that can come true.
Yeah. And just to say it's fantastic, really inspiring and exciting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. I was delighted to hear both of you speak, and it's very inspirational what you're doing, especially being so young, and the profession that you've chosen is very much white and male-dominated. And I'm wondering, this whole project falls within the ethos of a lack of knowledge about world history in the UK. Britain lacks knowledge. There's too much ignorance about world history. There's not enough information about other peoples. It falls within segregated communities and people living in silos and lack of communication and a lot of misinformation. What is your next project in terms of creating those bridges of communication to improve the status quo and generate the right atmosphere and the right climate for bringing people together and gather that educational prospects for improving? It's good that we're talking about partition here, but partition itself falls within the whole spectrum of lack of knowledge about world history. If you don't know the past, you don't know where you're going next. Mm-hmm. And this is what I had to say.
Yeah.
No, it's a comment that's probably valuable. I think for these 2 on their last 6 weeks, we've kept them head deep into concept design from feedback, and maybe one of the more experienced people here who we could pick this up. This is a topic we discuss most times, but we've got the rest of the evening to put the world to rights, I suppose. So I think but I think for these 2, it's the last 6 weeks, they've been going through the various stages of interpreting all the feedback, try to keep them focused on that. And they've done that circular diagram they put up of the process. If anyone is in this field of work, that's long nights, and redrawing and redoing, and we tasked it to these 2 to do it. So that's why I'm really most proud. Okay, just goes round and round and round. Only the midnight. Got one more question. One more.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Namaste. I have a question for all the people who are sitting here, and the question goes back to August 1947. Now, anybody here was anybody here present on 15th of August in India? That one, That means, were you alive and were you in India at that time? Anybody sitting here? Must be very old people. Anybody?
My grandmother's 88, she was.
I am.
She's not here.
I am. I am, and I saw everything there. In August, 15 August 1947, I was in India. So I went through the whole process, so I know everything about 15 August 1947. I was lucky anyway. I was lucky.
Got more questions about the design? Got one last question?
Yeah, hi. You two are just so impressive. I am just blown away by your calmness and your education and your presentations and your work. And very, very commendable. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Your parents will be very proud of you. I hope they're here. But MashaAllah. My question is I know you've narrowed your designs down to the presentation that you've done, but did you ever consider, was it ever in one of the suggestions, to use a train?
So we did.
Yeah.
So why I said train, sorry I'm interrupting you, was because my parents relay stories about the trains. So that's just a question.
Yeah, so it was actually in one of our initial design proposals to look at repurposing and reclaiming parts of train carriages or even bringing over pieces of train carriages. But because of the main purpose of the project was really about healing and bringing together communities, and some people find it still quite traumatizing to think about that or look at that part of the story, we just thought that it wasn't really appropriate in this specific scenario. But definitely looking at other parts of like expanding the project, parts of that could definitely be brought in if the community thought it was appropriate.
If you have a look at our idea generation page, there is some ideas on trains that if you want to give feedback on, that would be really appreciated. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you for your questions. Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for all that hard work, the research, the in-depth research you both, Aisha and Husmaya, have done for this with the support of Rav and no doubt many others. Some really thoughtful concepts and ideas. Obviously, nothing is fixed. There are still concepts and ideas. There are panels at the back of the room. Do go back and revisit them after everything you've heard today. And, feedback is welcome. This is what happened last year. A lot of these have probably come from some of the feedback last year as well. So, yes, we need to do events like this to get opinions and hear from our elders as well, who are sadly getting fewer and fewer. So we need to capture those ideas and moments as much as we can now. Right, we're going to go now onto our panel. So I'd like to invite our panelists on. Just find my notes. So we're now going to have a panel on lost voices and lost connections. So I'd like to invite the chair of the panel, Jasveer Singh, Saif Osmani, Dr. Aditi Kumar, and Dr. Nafisa Ali, please. So to the stage, thank you. Whilst they're coming on stage, I'll just give you a bit of background as to who everyone is. So Jasveer Singh is one of the commissioners on the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm. And amongst many other things, he's a prolific community activist. Over the last 2 decades, working primarily in empowering and lobbying for minorities in the UK. He's a family law barrister and a regular contributor to BBC Radio 4's Thought for the Day. He's a trustee and patron of several regional and national charities, and is co-founder of South Asian Heritage Month, an annual national awareness month which celebrates and commemorates South Asian art, culture, history, and identity. And of course, this falls within South Asian History Month. We also have Saif Osmani, is a visual artist and an architectural designer of British Bangladeshi heritage. He completed his master's at UCL Bartlett in architecture and historic urban environments. Since 2018, he's been a researcher, artist in residence at Loughborough University, London, joining the team on the Migrant Memory and Post-Colonial Immigration project that undertook interviews between Leicester and East London. A publication on the project is due soon. Presently, he's creating a blueprint study with Cockney cultures and the linguistics department of the University of Warwick, following Tower Hamlets Council's recognition of Cockney as a community language in March this year. Dr. Nafisa Ali is an interdisciplinary sociologist with expertise in the everyday lives of racialized and minority communities. She's a lecturer in sociology at Northumbria University and founded the Power and Intersecting Inequalities research group. Nafisa has published in the areas of Muslim sexualities, Islam and the environment, and the use of creative methods with diverse groups and communities that advocate more inclusivity in research. Nafisa's forthcoming book, titled Older South Asian Women's Experiences of Aging in the UK, Intersectional Feminist Perspectives, will be published with Palgrave Macmillan early 2024. Nafisa is also the principal investigator of the Lost Voices of Partition project, which explored the impact of trauma, memories, and experiences of older settled migrant South Asian women who have aged in the UK and were socialized at the time of or shortly after partition. This is the focus of today's discussion. Dr. Aditi Kumar is an art historian and a practitioner of visual arts and culture. Her research interests focus on identity formations, diaspora studies, post-colonialism, and global South debates, with a passion for challenging dominant narratives. She explores alternative perspectives through her research on visual and cultural production. Presently, a visiting fellow at the Warwick Interdisciplinary Centre for International Development, University of Warwick. She aims to reconceptualize partition of British India as an ongoing aspect of colonialization influencing contemporary international conflicts. Aditi believes in the power of visual and material culture to promote social justice and equality. Over to the panel.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. So the conversation we're going to be having now is about lost voices and lost connections. It's about the intergenerational connection when it comes to the stories of partition, the stories of our ancestors, really. So what I'm going to ask, first of all, is if Saif, Nafisa, and Aditi each want to just talk a bit more about the work that they're doing. I'll start with Saif, and then I'll come over this way. Over to you.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Hi, my name's Saif. I live in East London. I live in Newham. I was brought up in Tower Hamlets, and what I've found is increasingly the majority, really, we're in areas of ethnic majority. We're no longer ethnic minorities in little corners of Brick Lane, trying to get through. We in fact have our own voices in these areas. And I thought what was great about the panel before was these not just young but female voices are coming out from the community who are able to verbalize and put into words and physical form some of those things that we ourselves are experiencing collectively. So what I've been doing with the Migrant Memory and the Post-Colonial Imagination Project was since around 2020, we've been collecting loads of interviews of people not just being Indian, Pakistani and Bangladeshi, but also other people such as occasionally be Indians from the West Indies and people like that, and they've had their own narratives as well. It's never this main narrative of voices, and I think this is something we all struggle with internally, where we think, when we look at history, sometimes we look at the history books and we think we've kind of got it, but actually we often don't. We can see that history has multiple narratives, and I think this is why partition itself silences people actually more than anything. It doesn't always open up debate, and maybe those forums need to happen as well. Maybe we need to look at the new civic space for voices and people who have been partitioned in various ways. Sometimes partition isn't just about the political or historical. It's also what happens in our bodies and the way we look at each other, the way we consider our position in society. So for me, when partition came up, all of these voices came up at the same time. Coming from Bangladeshi background, you realize at one point your granddad was Indian, your parents don't talk about Pakistan really, and actually when it comes to Bangladeshi heritage and their understanding of partition, it's so removed that you have to go to a few generations before that, because a lot of the Bangladeshis I'd interviewed were not really able to remember that. So it was a borrowed heritage, and a borrowed encounter as well. So in a way, this becomes even more important that we really don't lose those voices because we're losing them really fast as well.
Thank you, Saif. Nafisa, if you could tell us more about the work that you have been doing and also the upcoming book that I believe you have.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, Sadi, for inviting me. I think it's a great project that we're doing here, Remembering Partition. And so I've been researching South Asian lives for quite a few years now, I'd say about 12 years in UK. And it's really nice to see partition actually coming to the fore and for us to actually say, you know, it's time that we acknowledge partition in our history and our heritage. My most recent project has been in Glasgow with the Women's Library, and what we're doing is trying to draw attention to the importance of the lack of attention that's been given to those who were socialised at the time of partition, like the uncle sat in the audience here who experienced partition, and how they've actually aged. So my project is actually looking at women's experiences, but what the issue is, like my grandparents who have now passed away, is they were socialised after partition. Their parents went through the trauma of partition. Nobody had post-traumatic stress support. Nobody had psychiatrists or counsellors to say, how do you feel? You know, this is what, you know, we need to give you support for this. There was a lot of legislation around silence. It was silenced. It was horrific. There was a lot of atrocities of the time. The generations that came in the 60s were actually socialised by these individuals who went through partition. A lot of trauma has been passed down intergenerationally, which we kind of ignore because we do not know that it exists. So this project is great, especially in London, because the attention that it should get is amazing, and it's time that we actually acknowledge the intergenerational trauma that's been passed down even to British-born South Asians because of partition. Our history and heritage, as Saif was saying, our grandparents are Indian. You know, in a lot of research, I have to define South Asian. I can't define South Asian. I have to say, you know, I'm Pakistani, Punjabi. You can't define a Pakistani Punjabi person. Their history lies in India. You know, it could be mixed. So I was uncovering my own history and heritage. We're, I suppose, 4 generations in. So the work that I do is about acknowledging our own history and heritage and saying it's about time now, we are very settled in the UK, to look at this disjointed migrant identity that we have. It didn't begin at migration in the 60s or 50s. We have post-colonial heritage with Britain. You know, our words are in English. We have Hindi words that are in English, pajamas, bungalow, many, many more. So a lot of the work that I am doing, looking at women, is how women have also been ignored. The way that women's bodies were actually used as weapons of war. What does that mean for us? What did partition mean to us? We, as younger generations, growing up in the UK, have been socialised with constructs of izzat and honour. They were actually exacerbated due to partition, and there's, again, lack of knowledge around this. I won't go on because this is a new project that I'm doing. We're at the beginning of this, and there's a lot more to unpick. But they're just ideas that I want to throw out there for you all to explore as well. You know, how has gender, ethno-religious identity been shaped because of partition? And these are the questions that we need to be asking within even these trails as well. I do want to just quickly put something out there before I pass it over. Trauma is a big thing. So we do need to acknowledge that even though the trails that might happen are amazing, you know, the trauma that it can elicit, even as younger generations listening to older parents and grandparents, it's quite heavy. There's an animation in that room that we did from our project. Please do have a look. Again, it's quite a heavy animation. It's short. But trauma needs to also be addressed. So how do we have the positive with the support that we need? So, yeah, I'll leave it there and I'll pass it up.
Thank you. And Aditi, last but not least, please share some of the work that you are doing in this field.
Thank you, Jasveer. So I absolutely echo with what Nafisa just said and Saif said. And for the past 1 decade almost, I've been working with oral narratives of partition and object and visual materials belonging to first generation and that have been passed across the border. So I do ardently believe what you said about silences and trauma. There are lots of scholarship which came up, especially in the last 2 decades or so, like Urvashi Batalia, Ritu Menon, Sarah Ahmed, who actually talk about the people's condition, the narratives of the women. And women in any Holocaust, in any genocide which has ever happened in human history, are always shoved down, you know. And as she said, the izzat, the concept of family's honor, women and the children are the most vulnerable, part of a society. And I just want to go a little further ahead. The main work which I've been doing is learning from those silences. How do you, I have interviewed first generation people both in India and the UK. So they have been, and some people have actually confessed to me those traumatic stories. Of course, I'm not getting into those. Their own family members never knew about that. And the objects just became those mediums because trauma is so deep rooted that people don't want to talk about that. They have left those memories behind in the subcontinent and moved to make new lives here in the UK or elsewhere in the world. So that gap, I could really figure out through material objects. For instance, there was this Sikh person I documented, Sikh woman who is now deceased. The great-grandchildren had preserved the military trunk, which had all the clothes of the women and her, jewelry. There's this word in Punjabi, kodiyan. These are actually the seashells or the safety pin. Very mundane objects. Like how mundane objects become evocative. We say, "Sadi dadi ne ditta si," like in Punjabi, "My grandmother gave this to me." Or, very mundane, maybe locket, maybe just, a very old tattered suit or a chunni or a dupatta. So how we carry those memories and all those memories then unravel those stories of, separation, of, families getting together. So my work also looks into this very important part, and that's what all of us are here and what Sadia is doing, re-remembering partition, Through that remembrance, we are re-remembering and reconciliation. And that's our, it becomes our shared responsibility to have those conversations. And all of us here are having those intergenerational conversations, and how we can learn from those. And here in the UK, the British South Asians, how we can also have that representation vis-a-vis, memorial parks or memorial spaces where we talk amongst ourselves about partition.
Thank you, Aditi. So things which have come up so far, I would say in all three of your very short talks, is the importance of noting the voices, listening to the narratives, but also being aware of the trauma and the fact that there can be intergenerational trauma, as well as trauma from generations who may have had no connection, no direct connection with what's happened during partition, and the importance to be aware of that. Now, I'm going to start, first of all, with talking about capturing stories, capturing the interviews, and I'll come to each of you to ask about this. Why do you personally feel it's important to have those narratives? What is it about those voices which, once someone passes away, is no longer with us? Why do we need to have them? So, Nafisa, I'll start with you, then I'll come to Saif, and then Aditi.
So the importance of, especially South Asian stories, is culturally, stories is a big thing. Our heritage has a lot of storytelling in it. If you ask, for example, when I was growing up, my mother would have a lot of stories as a migrant herself. she would tell me a lot of stories about her own family life back home. And it was passed down through the stories of home, the stories of childhood, the stories of fun and laughter and the things that they did. But then she'd also tell me religious stories as well, because a lot of these, a lot of my research is gendered, so it's about women, but a lot of the women were actually illiterate as well. So it's not that necessarily that you can say, here's a pen and paper, write down. Some can, but not all of them could. So it's, for example, oral histories, oral narratives are very important. There is also reasoning, I had this discussion before in the audience, about why a lot of these women at the time were illiterate as well. If we're looking at partition, the connection hasn't been made that a lot of these women were actually illiterate because of the fear of young girls and women going to school. If you're growing up shortly after partition and the atrocities that women faced, families would rather have their girls and women at home for protection. So obviously you have illiteracy, but also why not store our own cultural heritage of our language, which is also sometimes getting a little bit diluted as well. You know, it doesn't have to be in English. We can have Urdu, Punjabi, Hindi, Bengali. There's so many languages in South Asia. I can't even number how many there are. So the richness that we get from this data is important to capture as well.
Thank you. And Saif, you're already collecting interviews, and you've said that history has multiple narratives. Again, why is it important to have that, to capture the nuance, I guess, and the complexities that exist?
Well, I mean, the stories, as we know, are the foundations of our lives. In fact, if we look at everything on our phones, constantly telling us stories, they're probably taking our stories for all we know. But they became particularly important when I did the MMPI project, which if anyone wants to check it online, it's called memoriesofpartition.co.uk, and there'll be a few publications coming out with the team there, including Dr. Emily Kitely from Loughborough University. It took place in East London in context, but as I was gathering these stories, if I'm totally honest with you, I'm quite impatient as a person. So hearing what I thought was going to be a lot of people like my grandparents or my parents talking, I thought this is going to be a waste of time. But somewhere in me, I said that. But as I started listening to them, I realized it was actually piecing bits of my identity together. So what I was doing was finding out about why, for example, I found generally was that Indians were so aggrieved by it, how Pakistanis felt quite happy about having a new nation and why that was needing, and also how Bangladeshis has almost completely forgotten about it. So there are these steps within ourselves which are just not found and pieced together, and those started to happen. And if I fast forward just 2 years, it was really important to learn the language. My parents come from northeastern Bangladesh, from Sylhet, and that's a language which for a large part people said was a kind of a sort of dialect of Bengali, but we find, fast forward now, that it's not. In fact, it's its own language. So we have to look at why those languages die down, who's telling those stories, and I actually relearned Sylheti Nagri through a church group off of Brick Lane. And it was great relearning the language of your grandparents that missed a generation, which missed partition and the war and things like that. But at the same time, you realize how quickly in a generation things can lose themselves as well. And right now, the work we're doing with the Cockney cultures is to recognize that working class people as well have their own heritage and their own languages, which aren't just caricatured or cornered through these kind of far-right narratives or whatever it might be. What we need to do is we need to give it the space and the breathing space to acknowledge why those are important.
Thank you. And Aditi, I had the pleasure of coming to one of the workshops that you organised where people brought objects which were important to them, which were connected to partition, and then used that as a means of telling their stories. Now, the theme for South Asian Heritage Month this year is Stories to Tell, which is why I was asking why narratives are so important. Aditi, can you just explain a bit more how certain objects could be evocative? You've given a bit of information about how it can allow the mundane to become evocative. But what have you seen through some of the work that you've done? How has it had an impact on opening up those locked stories that some people don't want to tell?
So I'll just, rather than going in the theory of that, I'll just give you an example of a 92 years old Sikh Potawari person who was living, who's alive, and now he's deceased. It was in 2017. I went to his house and I knew he's one of the oldest surviving person from the other side of the border. And he had come from Gujranwala. So initially, of course, the thing about oral narratives is somebody will not open up to you immediately. You know, you have to have those bonds of intimacy and trust. So I went once, he didn't open up. Next time, he was a little hesitant. And the third time, I asked him, do you have something to show me which you got from the other side? And the second time, he showed me a sword, which he valiantly claimed that he had killed 12 people and saved his life. You know, it has to do a lot with, paternal kind of chivalry and stuff. And this was the third visit when he slowly went inside his room. And, you know, the old lockers, the wrought iron lockers, and he twisted and turned. And then he brought something out. And there was a charpai, the South Asian cot. And he got something, and it was wrapped in multiple polythene bags. And I thought this must be very exquisite and, very precious thing that he had wrapped in so many polythene bags and put it in a locker. And then he opens one bag, two bag, third bag, and then comes out this ubiquitous brass glass. And I was very much surprised that why he has kept that brass glass so he's preserved it. And then the story unraveled, that because of this brass glass, he could survive the 10 days long journey on foot that he covered from that side of the border to this side. And because he was also serving in the army, so there were caverns and spaces where he could drink, or just a river flowing by, just have water, or just, langars, or there were, people had put up free food spaces, just have something, a dal or something to drink, the lentil soup in that cup. So that became this object of survival for that old person. And that is became more precious than his jewels and other stuff. So that's how a very mundane object becomes this evocative and very, untradeable kind of a commodity.
Yeah, thank you, Aditi. It's impressive to hear the work that's being done. But as has already been commented upon, there is the impact of the trauma involved with partition. And some of us are aware of the statistics that are known and unknown. The fact that there were between 10 to 15 million people who were displaced by partition, over 1 million who died or were killed during partition, perhaps as high as 2 million, some people say. And then also the gendered violence, the 83,000 women and girls who were raped or abducted on both sides. It's a highly, highly traumatic experience that even in our own minds we can't necessarily understand. And the one way that I've been describing it to people is to imagine, first of all, that their nation gets independence on a particular day, as does another nation the following day, but you don't know where the border is actually going to lie for another 2 or 3 days afterwards. Imagine if that happened in Europe. Imagine the chaos at those areas where you think the border would be. And so the impact isn't just about those who were impacted directly, who had to then flee in the middle of the night. There's also that trauma of a part of your life, a part of your heritage, a part of your identity being partitioned off. To the extent that, for example, within the Sikh community, there's the ardas, the communal prayer, or the prayer which is said at various points in a certain day. And there is reference to partition within it. For those shrines which we have been excluded from, may we have an open opportunity for pilgrimage or to pay our respect. So it's something which is living, and yet it's also historic. So I'm going to come to each of you, and I'll start with Aditi and then Nafisa and then to Saif. How do you deal with the trauma that comes with this? And what kind of trauma do you see that is apparent when you have those conversations?
Yeah, of course, one has to be very careful and sensitive. If, for instance, this is a very traumatic experience I want to share, but of course it comes with warning. If somebody feels uncomfortable, please let me know. This person was suffering from a mental health issue, rather like physical brain. He had some brain surgery. And this, I'm talking about 2016, Lajpat Nagar, which is in New Delhi, and which is primarily a refugee settlement area. And this person was bedridden. And I approached him, and the daughter was, we don't know how long he has, so why don't you come and interview? And I remember I had this Nokia phone, and which had a voice recorder in it. I didn't have much of, and a Canon camera. And first, he just normally spoke to me about what happened and how they came across the border. And when the daughter and the granddaughter was sitting slightly away, he kind of confessed that he had to kill his own father because he was paralytic and he had to carry him on his shoulders. And the father said, please kill me because it'll only stop you when you his sons would be killed. And the marauders were just, coming from the behind. And he was like, please kill me. I don't want to be killed by those rioters. Please kill me. And the daughter and the granddaughter were shocked because they had never, ever heard those traumatic stories before. So trauma has a way to resurrect. It takes decades to come out. And I'm talking almost like 70 years after that incident had happened. So one has to have those devices to cope up with trauma. But as in all religious, whether Islam or Hinduism or Sikhism, people want to shed off what they hold on to when they are leaving this world. So there are, and that's why I always stress upon that it becomes our responsibility as second generation, third generation to reconcile with those trauma and find avenues through art, culture, just talking to elders or people of the family.
And it is truly shocking hearing about the experiences that took place during partition. Nafisa, obviously I want to talk to you about the gendered violence and focus on that and the trauma that comes from that aspect. Some of the stories we hear are absolutely brutal. We've heard Aditi talking about a father who asked his son to kill him, but then we also had the reverse happening where fathers were killing their own daughters in order to preserve sanctity or izzat. So are you able to just tell us a bit more about some of those issues of trauma and how those how they impact, really?
I think, unfortunately, we probably haven't got enough time to talk about all of this because my question is, which trauma do we address? First of all, with the gendered violence, the numbers that you said are the numbers that we know. They were actually sanitized for our knowledge. So the actual real numbers are probably significantly higher, especially with even the gendered violence, the killings, the rapes, abductions. So these are questions that have actually been acknowledged about not knowing this. That's first of all. Secondly, there were actually even not just the men, but even the women were leaving babies behind because of the speed in which they had to leave or the risks that they thought their daughters might be facing. The trauma that has been then passed down intergenerationally, not just in South Asia, on the other side of the globe, but here, as transnational migrants have come over and had children here. There's a lot of trauma in not being able to share as well, the silences. It wasn't that they didn't want to speak. They never got the opportunity to speak, and this is the thing. So immediately during and after partition, not just women, but most people were silenced. So women especially were silenced within their homes by family members they trusted, but on a political scale as well, there were legislations around silence, not speaking about this, because, for example, I'll give you an example, is, and I had these stories coming out in the narratives when I was speaking to the older women. Women might be Sikh, for example, and married to a Muslim man. There might be a Muslim woman married to a Sikh man. If the Sikh woman is on the Pakistan side and the Muslim woman is on the India side, they would be forcibly removed politically on religious grounds out of that family, whether they had children and they were perfectly happy there, they would be forcibly removed because of their religion. I know a number of people who said that their husbands were previously married to somebody who was not the same religion, and they lost those wives. Or people might have adopted a different religion without saying. So we might have actually mixed religious heritage that we don't know about because it was silenced. There's lots of trauma that goes on. And then we have the trauma of honor and shame, which has been passed down, which has resulted in a lot of guilt as well. For example, particular behaviors if you're not conforming to your South Asian identity. I think I'll have to stop there because it depends on which scale we're looking. So we look at the macro scale of trauma, or we look at the micro levels, or if we're looking at the collective trauma, which I think we need to start doing, but also the subjective ones and how we support that individually. Because we can't remember partition without supporting these people. It's wrong for us to start saying, tell me your story, and leave that person. And we're not doing that, unfortunately. Even in our projects, because we're not aware of it, we don't have the right support. And that's why you're doing a lot of creative methods. My projects do creative methods to try and gently come in. But without that knowledge, they're problematic. So we need to learn more about how to do that as well.
No, of course. There's a film that comes to mind when you're talking about the religious heritages that some people may have, and it's Commemorate, which is a brilliant film, which if you haven't seen, it's from 2003, but it talks about some of the issues that Nafisa was just talking about. So please do. Binjur as well, yes. So there are a number of films which are out there. Sadly, I find that those are few and far between because it is such a difficult topic for many people to broach. And Saif, turning to you on the issue of trauma, obviously there's the work that you're doing which looks at almost a trauma which is taking place over different generations, but also the multiple traumas, one could argue, about being Indian first in, say, 1946, 47, then becoming forcibly Pakistani, and then becoming Bangladeshi in 1971 onwards, 72. So there's the trauma, I guess, that's connected to that changing identity constantly over a very short period of time, really.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when we're looking at partition, I think we have to ask ourselves, are we unpacking colonialism, and do we need to decolonize, and how do we do that? And those are questions we'll be asking at the same time when we look at partition, I think. And I think the West itself, if we look at it, it would be so much less richer without the influx of South Asian migrants of various kinds, other parts of Asia as well, obviously, and Africa as well. And we're seeing that more than ever before. We're realizing that the West is increasingly not being produced but just by one monoculture, but actually to really survive, we need to be multicultural in all its forms. We need to acknowledge that money now following Brexit might be coming from somewhere else. We might have to engage with countries we haven't engaged with. And I think there's a kind of, that part is kind of exciting because you're actually looking at the impact of migration itself. But with it, again, we're carrying a lot of trauma. Somebody once did a research and found that South Asian families carry the same sort of trauma as people in post-war situations, because often we're holding it there and we're holding parents, grandparents' trauma as well. And what I did last year, which was really good, there was a group of ethnic minorities mainly who came together called Kindred Dreaming, and we came together and we looked at that in all its forms in our bodies. We looked at other ways of addressing it through creativity, through talking, through going back to nature, through food, for example, and how food itself has been so colonized and systemized and treated badly. So I think unraveling in a different way is fine. It's about time we did that, you know, and we can do that now because I think the lens of the world is different. We're making history as we're walking every day. It's always made by all of us collectively at one point. So I think trauma is there and is part of life. I think partition happened for a reason, and if we look at it economically on a world global scale, it happened probably because the West needed it more than anything, and maybe history is going to rewrite it again. I don't know, but either, for the time being, I think the stories will keep us going.
Yeah, thank you, Saif. I think we have very limited time, unfortunately. I know that Saif, Nafisa, and Aditi will be remaining for any questions that any of you may have, so we don't, unfortunately, have time for a Q&A immediately. Okay, we have got 3 minutes. There we are. I've been corrected. So if we have very quick questions, and what I'll do is I'll take 3 questions from you 3 there, and then we'll have the responses collectively. So if we could have the mic going to the 3 individuals over here.
Right. Hi, thanks very much. My name is Bhupinder Singh Basin, and last year we helped to make a film called Children of Partition. You'll see the poster of it somewhere over there. And there we basically did collect stories. In fact, it was, 25 stories, which isn't enough. But actually, these will be archived in full at the London Metropolitan Archive. And some of the stories were from my generation as well, because they were stories that we've been handed down through different, that we've all heard of. But one little, couple of things I wanted to just say, actually. All of my grandparents are from, let's say, West Punjab. And actually, a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to actually go and visit Pakistan. And actually, the welcome that we felt when we went there was so warm that it was like a homecoming. And when we say remembering partition, we've also got to remember that prior to partition, we were one community. Yeah? Whether we were Hindu, Sikh, or Muslim, we were one community. Now, what we really need to do is make sure that the divisions that happened 75 or 76 years ago now on those national grounds don't get translated into today. Because sadly, a couple of years ago, a Sikh parent, actually told me a story about her child coming home from school in tears, saying, oh, this Muslim person said to me that, oh, Sikhs kill Muslims, we don't like Sikhs. So these are the stories that, we've got to remember that prior to partition, we were one community. We cannot let these ideas of national identity it's difficult. I think when this whole India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, that sort of separation that happened back then, in effect, it's something that happened to us. It wasn't something that everyday Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus wanted. Thanks.
Thank you, Bhupinder. I think there was the person over there, and then the person at the front. Yes.
Hi, my name is Deepthi. It was lovely listening to your talk. I just had a question for Nafisa. Could you elaborate a little on the excommunication religiously that you mentioned earlier, and how a project like this might not struggle with dealing with it, not as other, but how it might benefit a sensitivity of this project?
Thank you. I'll ask Nafisa to answer that in a moment. If you could just pass the microphone forward to the gentleman there. Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. This is such a wonderful talk you guys are having. But my question was, and thought was that we've seen partition between 2 countries. In fact, there's a third nation that's still being partitioned but still not fully partitioned. And I haven't heard one mention of it at all today or seen anything. And that's only because I'm just thinking about it. And that's Kashmir. And the lost voices that are still being lost as of today because no one is talking about them. No one's realizing that they're still part of that partition period of this time. So the 75 years of splitting a true nation is still actually going on with the third nation of Kashmir. So what are your thoughts about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Nafisa, I'll ask you to answer the second question, or the second statement.
Yeah. So with the second one, we're talking about the religious divides. Is that you mean the
religious excommunication?
Yeah. So the projects it's going back to that inclusion and to share and recognise that actually we were part of the same country. We were living together, the harmony and the solidarity that exists. And this is what's coming out in the stories as well. So there's so many people, a lot of my participants are Muslim, but a lot of them are saying, you know, we had Sikh members in our family, we had Hindu members in our family, we had neighbours who were Sikh or Hindu, and the love and the harmony and the solidarity that they had at pre-partition, but also post-partition as well, is coming out. So what's coming out is more that the everyday experiences against the political climate was very different. You know, even when partition was happening, yes, there was aggression between the religions because of the war and conflict, but then there were others who were actually helping and hiding people and that safety net. So I think what we will get from the projects is actually going back to, I suppose, there are differences, but we are the same. We have the same shared heritage and history. And the other thing we've talked about, you know, India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, and yes, Kashmir as well, but Britain as well. We lived with Britain for nearly 200 years. You know, Britain wasn't foreign to us. The clothes, the dress, the language was part of our heritage. And we need to bring that back as well, you know, so.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you to Saif, to Nafisa and Aditi for this really enlightening and enriching conversation. I think it's so important for us to be able to talk about the narratives which we are sadly losing, but also the work that's being done to help preserve it, as well as the opportunity to talk about the more traumatic aspects and how we deal with trauma today. So please, everyone, a round of applause for our three panelists. Thank you.
Thank you for an amazing discussion to our amazing panelists. So once again, a round of applause for Jasveer, Aditi, Nafisa, and Saif. Thank you. Wow, and really incredible discussion. It really shows the importance of not just exploring and talking about these histories, but the importance of doing with care and for all the trauma that is hidden in our bones. And I implore you, if there are any elders in your family, talk to them. As we hear about Holocaust stories, the elders don't speak unless they're given an opportunity to speak. And hopefully initiatives like this and other things that are happening will enable what few elders are left in our midst to actually speak openly about this. I know some people who are here have elders in their family. You know, it was a traumatic period for many of our families and our ancestors. And what can we do to honor their trauma as well? Maybe this memorial, if it ever happens, will go some way into doing that. And now, for the final bit of this evening, which one of the main reasons why we're here today, the launch of the Empire and Partition Heritage Trail, the Westminster edition. So I'd like to invite the speakers up for this. So Samara and Sarah and Mansi as well. If you haven't got your copy, make sure you do get your hands on a copy. They're available on the table there. They're free. You may not be able to get hold of them so easily after today, so do get your physical copy. It's a beautiful work of art, if nothing else. We've enjoyed looking at them in the office as well and with colleagues, so what a wonderful project that's been. The depth of research that has gone into creating this trail, not only for the printed map, but the online version as well, which these wonderful people will be talking about, in presenting the history of the Empire and Partition through places and spaces in London. Many places that you and I have probably walked by or been to and not actually realize the implication of what these places are or what they've been part of. Samara has done some amazing work with Everyday Muslim and became an volunteer earlier this year. She's one of the individuals who created the 10-year impact report and has come from a healthcare background. And she had the opportunity to engage with a plethora of people from Britain's multicultural communities. Growing up as a third-generation British South Asian, she grew up with tales about partition and the struggles to integrate into society. Sarah, not only is she one of the many amazing daughters of Sadia, because Sadia, all her daughters are amazing, is a history graduate from Queen Mary University of London and a long-term volunteer with Everyday Muslim, both as a researcher, writing blogs, and of course supporting on events like this, which can't be done without the help of volunteers and the support of volunteers. She also freelances as an event social media manager and journalist, and is currently working with Katebe Publishing House on writing storybooks for young children. And then finally, Mansi Popale is a creative consultant specializing in contested heritage and decolonizing spaces. She is a creative director of History Speak, a London-based practice that engages with community groups, heritage organizations, and members of the public through workshops and walking tours. She has worked in collaboration with the Office of the Mayor of London, with us as part of London Unseen, Historic Royal Palaces, Museums Association, and an independent theatre makers and storytellers. You can find out more about her on historyspeak.co.uk. But also, if ever you have, a spare afternoon, Mansi really seriously does some amazing walks. She does a British Empire walk. She's recently created Women and Power in Westminster walk as well. And there's a Battersea walk as well. But the British Empire walk is truly eye-opening. So if you think you know it all, you don't when you go on this walk. So over to the wonderful team here. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Like Chetna said, my name is Sarah Ahmed, and I'm also the eldest and quote-unquote favorite daughter of Sadia. I am presenting today with Samra Abbas, and we are both volunteers with the Everyday Muslim organization and members of the Research and Advisory Board. We are also here with Mansi Popale. Before we start, I think it's really important to address the importance of this partition project, but from a more personal perspective. This year is the 10th year anniversary of Everyday Muslim, meaning for 10 years and a lot more, I've seen my mum working away at various heritage projects, documenting tirelessly British Muslim history across various cultures and stories. But it was a while until I started to understand personally the impact of her work, which has led to my absolute love and a degree in history. The Everyday Muslim has played a monumental part in my life, as well as my siblings and others, in providing us with a sense of identity and belonging. It's contributed significantly to enhancing my admiration for the generations before us, and if it wasn't for the work of my mum, I wouldn't have so many memories and voice notes of my grandparents and their incredible stories of migrating to London, moving homes, working in one of the first Asian grocery shops, and surviving partition at the mere age of 5 to hold on to. For that, I am forever indebted to her. I, along with most people in the room today, have been taught history from the view that glorifies white men, white history, and their infamous divide and rule conquests. But as I've gotten older, and mostly while working and researching with my mum, as well as many other projects, I've come to grasp that we truly do have a part to play in a society where it feels almost impossible to belong to or fit in. We have a story, and it is ours to tell, share, and be proud of.
And for that, I'd like to extend a very quick thank you to everyone here who's contributed and attended to make today the success it is. Now, you've already heard about the proposal of a partition memorial from the amazing concept designers, Aisha and Khazaima. But now we're going to take a turn and look at the launch of Everyday Muslims' partition-based walking trail. I will now hand over to Samra, who will discuss some of the stops included on the trail, after which I will discuss the why and the significance of the walking trail in relation to partition, community, geography, and identity.
Thank you, Sarah, for that lovely introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. It's an honour to be here today launching the Everyday Muslims event with everyone here. So this is my second project with Everyday Muslims, and as Zara has aptly stated, over the past 2 intense months, all of us volunteers have witnessed the dedication and time it's taken to show the connections between South Asian heritage and the representation of our identity. So many of our researchers are based in London, where the trail will also be based, but we also have some volunteers and researchers like myself who are from around the country. So I'm from Lancashire, if you can't tell from my accent, where even today you can see a lot of the iconic mills and factories that spurred that South Asian migration to England for work. Throughout my childhood, I grew up hearing about the interreligious communities of pre-partition, and through my great-grandma, my Barinano, I learned about the picturesque village girl life that they went through, that within that life, they had times where you had Muslim and Sikh and Indian children all playing together. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional. And through my grandfather's stories in Pakistan of his time during the very new Navy of 47, and then his struggle as a migrant worker when he moved to this country. I learned about my mother's England, where laws and regulations didn't really know or hadn't really caught up with cultural discrimination. That wasn't really part of the system at that point. My own struggle with coming to terms with the harsh realities of partition and communal tensions it had produced that surpassed the time when Radcliffe drew that line across our hearts and across our homeland and embedded itself into the generations and lives of those today. This project has been rewarding, it's been heavy, but I truly hope that it opens up the world to the magnitude of lives that have been affected in both a positive and negative way, and provides a greater sense of universal acknowledgement for the empire, for the partition, for the people that were affected by this. Throughout this project, we as volunteers have had the privilege to work alongside some amazing historians and academics, and I'm grateful to be in this position where I can assist in imparting that knowledge that I attain to the public realm. So thank you, Sadia, and everyone, Nancy, for all this, for all these opportunities to do so. So I'm excited to be presenting 2 heritage trails. We have a physical map that everybody should have and a digital trail. So beginning with our physical Empire and Partition Heritage map, this printed map is a walkable distance around Westminster, and it's going to be available and distributed to community groups across London. The map does come with directions, so you just simply scan the QR code on your mobile phone and then you get a link to this Google map. And then this can be used to navigate the route independently, reinforcing the flexibility of the trail. So we are aware that the map could have covered any section of London, and there were many possibilities within and around London to host this heritage trail. We chose Westminster as the location for the map due to its centrality, but most importantly because it's an area where all of the history from 1600s right up to 1900s comes together in one space from start to finish. It's undoubtedly a space where multiple layers of history and interconnectedness. Westminster is a space with a historically and very present rich political background that hasn't always left space for belonging. Having the trail in this location acts as a statement to reclaiming our history and identity that's always been ours to begin with. Locations for trails are something that the project is welcome to exploring and can be looked at in potential future projects with other historians and community groups. It should be acknowledged that this trail, particularly the digital map, is ongoing and will be one of the many legacies to untold partition stories. So the map contains a short summary of the timeline that you should be able to see, and that's just what the trail will cover. And the map itself consists of 10 stops, Each point on the map helps to relay the story of empire and partition, starting with the Roundtable Conference at St James's Palace. The public are then guided through significant events, influential figures, and key organisations that shape the history between Britain, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. On the side of the map is a short summary with details about each stop. The trail aims to cover the diversity of those affected by partition and empire. It's designed with stops where many significant events have transpired. So an example of that would be Caxton Hall. This is a stop that comes with a lot of layers of history, because here we have a space that is significant to the Sikh community, as Adhan Singh's assassination of Sir Michael Adaya from the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and then also to the Pakistani community, where the meeting of the All India Muslim League Party occurred. The trail offers lots of layered history, as our aim is to show an unbalanced timeline that honours the legacy of the independence of partition. So following on from that, we have the Millicent Garrett Fawcett statue, and this shows that partition and independence came hand in hand. So the suffragette movement that actually occurred in England, part of history we taught about in schools, also had another participant who was Princess Sophia Duleep Singh, and she was a key figure in this movement. And it shows that the suffrage that we attained here provided universal suffrage in newly independent countries after independence. Many times the struggle for independence in Bangladesh gets lost when focusing on the partition of 1947. Through the trail, we hope by including stops such as Claridge's Hotel, where we can highlight the struggle for Bengali independence. Claridge's is a focal point for inter-community conversations in our post-colonial independence. So moving on to our digital map. So this map is going to be available on the Layers of London website, which is a map-based history website that's been developed by the Institute of Historical Research. This is where users can access free historic maps of London, contribute stories, memories, and histories to create a social history resource about their area. So on the Layers of London homepage, we're going to click on Explore the Map. That should then take you to the search page, and there we want to type in Empire and Partition. After that, it'll come up with these options here, and you want to click on the trail at the bottom. And then if you click the Start Trail button, users can follow through the points on the map. And the beauty of both of these maps is it's accessible and flexible, whether it's exploring the docks of the East Indian Company or journeying to Jinnah's portrait at the National Liberal Club. Unlike the Westminster-based physical trail, the digital map will cover the whole of London. This will be especially beneficial to those who aren't based in or around London, like me. The trail is not restricted to a single type of monument, so we've included statues, portrait galleries, monuments, open spaces, and buildings. The digital map will have even more. So the map will be user-generated. Members of the public can add and create pieces about partition and empire and then pinpoint them onto the map with any images that they might have. I want to emphasize that this is an organic story, one that we'll continue to add to and develop. We've just emphasized a loose narrative and set the foundations down for the wider diaspora to then to be able to populate and develop the timeline with more narratives and even more perspectives. So with this platform, friends, families, historians alike can input the everyday individual stories of those who are present or affected by partition. The digital map is a unique way to help those involved to speak about their histories, with the digital platform as the perfect archive to preserve them. So on the screen here, you can actually see an example of that. This is the story of Ayub Ali Master, and it's available already on our digital website. So currently, members of the public will be able to add locations within London only. However, around November this year, we'll have access to a new platform where people outside of London can then begin to incorporate and add to the digital map. Everyone attending will be given information about this, and then for any further information, please refer to the Everyday Muslim website. So we've tried to condense a portion of history into 2 heritage trails and shown the history of a diverse group of people. And now that brings us to the end of the heritage trails, and I'd now like to invite Sarah back to discuss the importance of the trails. Thank you.
Thank you, Samra. So why walking trails, and why is this an important walking trail? Walking trails are a unique and engaging way to provide an immersive and interactive learning experience. It gives the public the opportunity to visit sites and monuments around the City of London, specifically Westminster, that they perhaps otherwise wouldn't understand or connect with. The Partition Trail, with its various stops, like some were discussed, helps to grasp the geographical and cultural context of the partition of India, as well as its far-reaching cultural and societal implications. It calls attention to the fact that we are living in a post-colonial world. It's important to emphasize the fact that the partition of India is very much British history, as it is South Asian, if not more, and stops like Mountbatten Statue and Clive Steps are there to serve as visual representation of the colonial legacy. Although statues reflect somewhat of a visual representation, the physical and digital map uncover a different narrative to the existing colonialized stories of partition. For example, Mountbatten's disregard to popular sentiment and hasty, arbitrary borders, and Clive's monopolization of trade by the British in India is a perspective most ordinary people would not have heard of. The statues like Gandhi's, only mounted in 2015, and Jinnah's portrait only last year, and are significant examples of post-colonial legacies. The geography of the trail is worthy of attention. A borough hustling and bustling with people, namely tourists, and a rich history that oozes politics, Westminster acts as a bold strike back to the empire. The statues and monuments sit proudly at Westminster, boasting the great statesmanships and administration of Mountbatten and the heroic East India Company General Robert Clive. However, this trail paves the way for another untold perspective to sit alongside. The visual and geographical nature of the trail presents a deeper, more visible history, showcased through public art, acknowledging the diverse perspectives involved and the sensitivities associated. Therefore, the map and the idea of living history in the public realm is to uncover the emphasized history of white men, which is heavily intertwined and connected to ours, allowing the reclaim of a hidden history and regaining that sense of belonging. If you have a look at the map, there will be other sites in London that we have identified to connect these stories to. So if there are places or people you find are missing from the trail, you'll most likely find them on the digital map and can also leave your feedback in the box behind you. The trail invites communities and families, friends, providing a platform for open dialogue, curiosities, and discussions on personal histories, as well as the complex, like colonialism, nationalism, identity, and reconciliation. The physical trail can be adapted to embark on alone, with a guide, as a group, friends, or even as schools. And it's important as we create these trails to remember to revisit history already well documented. We are not here to rewrite history, we are here to uncover the perspectives and bring to light the narratives never heard before on British soil. This helps to spark conversations about events that took place and can lead to a lot more. Before we end, I'd like to give a huge thank you to the advisory board, namely Rav Singh and Mansi, who have been instrumental in helping to create this exceptional walking trail. This trail stands as a testament to the power of collaboration and dedication, and we are also excited to work with you again. I'd also like to pass on to Mansi, who will discuss her on the advisory board too.
Yeah, that was amazing. I don't know if I have anything to say. So hello, everyone. My name is Mansi. As Chetna said, I do the British Empire walking tour. So this is pretty much my stomping ground right over here. But this has been an amazing experience to work with researchers who are truly passionate about this subject. Now, I have to acknowledge where we are and also when we are. We've spoken a lot about partition, but it does come hand in hand with independence. And Pakistan and India have celebrated 76 years of independence on the 14th and 15th, so just 2 days ago. So it's not a coincidence that we're here on the 16th of August. So these histories are also very linked, and we have to remember that there are these two countries that are celebrating these 2 days as we are talking about these issues over here. Thank you, Sadia, for inviting me to advise on this walking trail. I hope I've been helpful. But I also wanted to pull it back and really talk about empire, because when we say partition, the word really resonates very differently in London. We have to always caveat it with which year we're talking about, because London is a space, specifically Westminster is a space, where a lot of borders have been drawn across the world. So we have to say which year we're actually talking about. And I think that's why choosing Westminster as a space, that's something that we all kind of came to the consensus of choosing Westminster as a space, because it's the idea of the empire talking back. We want to talk back to the powers and the narratives that are already placed in Westminster. Now, this entire project is done under the umbrella of the CDPR, which is the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm. And I really want to, again, emphasize public realm. These are public spaces. We have a right to walk over there. We have a right to look. We have a right to interpret. So the smallest thing that we can do is walk. And that's why I do walking tours, Rav does walking tours, and we are launching this amazing trail. So if you don't do anything, the minimum you do is walk with this. So I highly encourage you to not just take this home with you and show it, but also to take it to Westminster, walk around, and reclaim the space. So we should go there and actually really do that. The other amazing, unique thing about this project, and this as a whole and in specific, is that it foregrounds the community heritage perspectives and intergenerational narratives of families impacted by political decisions. And I think that's really reflected in the audience that we have today. We have researchers who are second, third generation British, and we also have people in the public who have experienced 1947. So this is really the community reclaiming their story, their narrative. We are not only being spoken about, but we are the ones telling the story. And the mechanism that the researchers have put in place with Layers of London, I think I'm reiterating their invitation for you to contribute to that. And if you look at the stops on Layers of London, you will see that there's some really interesting stories about people who moved here and started a restaurant, and these really human stories that tell you about what the impact of these political decisions were. So that is super important. And the last thing I want to say is really talking about the unique power of London. We're talking about partition. I just mentioned independence. But what we have here today is a very unique, undivided space, and that is a really powerful thing. So even though the Radcliffe line was sanctioned over here, and this has been the space that has divided a lot of places across the world, we can at the same time come together over here. I don't know how it has happened, but the first time as an Indian who moved here, the first time I met a Pakistani person was in London. And we speak the same language, we share very similar culture. But that happens in London. If anyone knows why that happens in London, please tell me. I don't know why that is. But we are in a very powerful space where we can create this undivided, united sort of perspective on history. And thank you, Sadia, so much for creating the space for us to come together. And if we have any questions, I think, do we have time for questions? Yeah, okay, 2 minutes for questions. So any questions to the researchers? Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just coming from a community perspective because I run a community organization around heritage and culture. Just wanted to kind of ask you, what work are you doing to kind of take this really deep into communities, to young people as well who aren't really aware of their heritage, and which creates a bit of a risk and a danger for people to not be aware. But is there anything that you're doing, all the organizations and the project overall, which is just to take that where it's not necessarily being taught in schools and colleges? It'd be really interesting to hear what you might be involved in.
I think probably Sadia would be the best person to answer that.
I know, I was going to save you. All right here. Yeah, we work in schools. We've created lots of educational resources. They're used in madrasas and Saturday schools and Sunday schools. We work with community groups. I've forgotten the question.
How can we almost take it right deep into community, to young people across all religions and backgrounds? Because I think there is a bit of a vacuum there.
Yeah. So I was having this conversation a little earlier, and I was saying that the project is Everyday Muslim, but if I had started the project 15, 20 years ago, it would have been something South Asian. A lot of our history is interconnected, so a lot of our stories are shared. So a lot of the interviews that we do collect aren't just from Muslim people, they are from the wider community, about the Muslim community. So it's about, especially this project, obviously, it's about the shared and connected histories between us. And we've always just tried to provide a platform to come together, to share our knowledge and share it wider as much as we can and create the kind of resources that are accessible, like the walking trail, like the classroom resources, and really to highlight each other's work as well, because without each other's work, when we can't work in silos, because well, then we're not a community. So I hope that answers your question.
Just to add, I recognise you now, I follow you on Instagram, Wilma. So, look, I think from my perspective, they're celebrating 10 years, Everyday Muslim. I've done this now for 12 years. Mansi's getting started probably in her third year. And if others were here, we're micro-organisations. These are passion projects for us. We've got bills to pay, we do everything, but this is where we find our calling. To go into the mainstream space, I'm looking at Professor Kitely there, they've helped us along the journey. They make us part of educational projects or university projects, and we suddenly find that our voice has an impact or a value. We've walked the streets with no one following us. I've done that plenty of times, With 30 Instagram followers, you're not going to get anywhere. Now you're at 3,000, 4,000, but still, we need the support of our communities. I can easily put a lottery grant in and go outside into the mainstream space, but that's not going to get these kids to understand that history. We need to tell our stories, and I'm just going to, for the first time last year, we came together, and it was like a mini union. There was 5 of us: Jewish history, Muslim history, Empire history, Sikh history, and just that has created in the last 12 months so much for all of us that I can go part-time at work, and I can still pay my bills. But, that's where it's going. So we want others to step up, because now the space is coming where it can start to help paying the bills. When we started, it was just basically, it's because we wanted to do it. So going into schools means half a day off work. Going into meetings where you sit around and discuss means time, but we do it because that's what we do. But we need more people to do it. And we're all on open platforms. You look at any of our websites, it's all download for free. And yet, does any school download for free? No, because we haven't got an MA in marketing. We don't know how to engage with schools and teachers and get them to download for free, run your lesson plan, and here's your mark scheme. Because we've done it. We did it for one school, put it on open platform, every school can download it. We can only do what we can as micro-organisations. And yet there should be 10 little history of the Sikhs. There should be 40 everyday Muslim organisations. By now there should be. That's my little passion plea for, let's support each other. We're starting to do it. But all you have to do is tag us in and give us an opportunity, because I'd rather be doing this than doing my day job in front of Excel.
And when you ask a community group a question, you get 3 answers to one question. So I'm going to say something as well. So this is, the way this map has been curated, Sadia was very kindly invited Rav and me to also advise on this. And I think one of the things that we tried to do was really make it so that it's relevant to a larger diaspora. So now it's basically up to you guys. There's a reason that there's an online one, and we are handing these out today. So please help us do what you want us to do. Send it out to your community, go on the walk. These are resources. So yeah, but I'm just batting that back to you now. Okay.
I've changed the question I was going to ask on the basis of what I've heard, or at least I'm adding one in. And you were talking about not being able to get things to schools and schools not downloading because of the organisations being small. And it reminded me that this year I was at both the Historical Association Conference and the Schools History Project Conference, where history teachers come together. And at both of them, there were more than one workshop on partition. And they were led mainly by British South Asian history teachers. So, one thing I'm willing to take on is making the connections that you guys could be at those conferences next year or the year after and the year after to continue that discussion and to bring in the community aspect as well as the perspective of the teachers. I can confirm, because Everyday Muslim worked with our school 10 years ago, that the work with schools has been going on for a long time. But the other thing I was just going to say was that something came to my mind. I'm speaking from ignorance here, but thinking about other spots in Westminster, am I right in thinking that it's at one of the universities in central London that many of the future activists for the independence of India in the kind of 1910s and 20s were studying? And am I right in thinking that there was an India club off the Strand where so many of those people, students, were based and from where they were activists.
Shall I do part one and you can do part two? The part one is the Oxford Education Act in 1830s. So what happened is they were inviting young people from India to bring them over, train them in the Empire way, send them back to run the Indian civil service. What happened is when they came to Oxford and they came to UCL and Cambridge, they actually found that this is how free society works, so people can think and people have freedom. So what they happened, instead of going and running the civil service, they became the founding members of all these independent associations, which then brings us to the India Club.
So the India Club, I was going to mention this, so thank you for raising it. If it's not on the digital map, it will be soon, or you feel free to add it yourselves. The India Club is a place that's on the Strand, a few doors down from Somerset House. So if you're looking at Somerset House, it's on the right, sorry. But I implore you, if you want to go and see it, you need to go and see it ASAP. There's news that it may be closing imminently. We had lovely lunch there last week. I'd been to the venue maybe a couple of times before, but it is quite an epic and monumental place. The food is brilliant, as one would expect, but please do try and go and visit before it closes. And I mean, literally in the next 2-3 weeks. It's that imminent, potentially. So yeah, the India Club, it's where a lot of the activists used to meet. Mansi, I don't know if you want to say more about it.
I'm not employed by the GLA, so I'm going to be cheeky.
Be
okay,
cheeky.
Thank you. So since it's going to close, if anyone over here knows how to get a blue plaque, we need a Nubian Jack for South Asian community, but yeah. Amazing, because
Sorry,
I
what's
think
your
India
name?
Club needs a blue plaque.
Shahira, sorry.
Shahira.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll talk afterwards.
Yes, please.
But yes, so it's been under threat of closure for the last few years. National Trust has done a booklet on it as well, when it was under threat of closure, I think just before pandemic. Yes. But yeah, I really implore you to go and just have lunch or just step in that space. It is phenomenal. It still feels like it's 1946 in there. Yeah. I mean, really, the pictures in there speak for themselves as well. So yeah. Time for one last question if anyone's got one. Lady over there.
Hi, I just wanted to know if the information at the sites on this map or on the digital map would sort of reflect this understanding of partition. I'm not sure if the information available there does.
We've tried our best. So it's an editorial exercise again because it's so much history. And we will keep adding, but I guess that's the point of the digital map, to kind of help give people a space to add more to it, because again, we are restricted by how much space we have on the map. Oh, and before I forget, the illustration for this map is done by Khizra. I know she's trying to hide at the back over there, but she's the talented artist who's done the illustration, also one of Sadia's daughters. So yeah, to answer your question, we have tried our best. Again, history is such a strange thing. We're trying to tell a story, right? So we're trying to maintain a sort of link between the spaces and also give this different perspective. So we've tried our best, but I guess there's more to do, or there's more space to do it on the digital map. And the digital map, you can add layers to it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Mansi, Sarah, and Samra, sorry. Thank you so much for telling us about how you put this map together. Go and use it, as they've said. Add your own stories to it. Find your own places. It can only grow with people using it. And this is just a reflection of us coming together. What we need to do, and what we talked about. The schools programs, for example. If we don't demand these things to happen, they're not going to happen. The more voices that speak up about it, the more that can be done about it, the more the likes of Rav, Mansi, and these wonderful, amazing young people in the room today, can be employed to tell their own histories. the amazing historians and the researchers in this room as well. Unless we demand our stories to be told, no one else is going to demand them for us. So I implore you, please go out there and subscribe to all these wonderful people. So Mansi is historyspeak.co.uk, a little history of the Sikhs.org, follow Rav, follow Everyday Muslim. Also look at Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm to see about other stories as well. So that's london.gov.uk/CDPR. Follow all the amazing other people in this room as well, and start sharing your histories. Thank you. So now, wow, what a wonderful, poignant, and moving afternoon, evening. A huge, huge thanks to Sadia, her team, amazing team, all the amazing speakers that are in the room today, and the ones who were involved last year as well. I can see some of them here, Sarah, for example. I'm probably missing a few others as well. Everyone who contributed to the panels, all the people who were involved in the community engagement and the research. Sadia's amazing daughters, Khizra and Mara, have done the films that are in the room at the back and the sort of mini memorials there. If you haven't seen them, do go and check them out. We've got some time before the end of the evening. And to all of you for making the effort to come out on such a hot day, be part of this discussion, and hopefully to continue that discussion. This evening has been curated with such care and understanding of all the importance and nuances of exploring such experiences with much unresolved trauma, but also the invisibility of this history being important in this country, in this city, the architects of partition. We are often made to feel like our histories do not matter, or even told versions of history that erase our experiences completely. And when our histories and experiences are not given space, we as people, as individuals, and as communities are symbolically made to feel like we shouldn't exist. It is thanks to initiatives like the Commission, Everyday Muslim, A Little History of the Sikhs, that these wider stories are now being given space and starting to be told to a wider audience. The work Sadia and her team is doing is symbolic of the best parts of the work that has emerged from this Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm. I've been so proud to be able to support incredible practitioners working with authenticity, integrity, innovation around heritage and culture in the public realm, and breaking down some of the barriers and overcoming many of the challenges in this kind of work. As Debbie mentioned, this is my last day at the GLA working on this project and working to support projects and people like we have heard from today. This will make me miss this work. But the challenges that come with changing attitudes and fixed ways of doing things can be exhausting. So I'm looking forward to the rest. And whilst I may not be working at the GLA, I really look forward to being part of this project and seeing it grow into whatever reality our communities choose to take it. Once more, a big thank you to Sadia, to all the speakers, to all the commission team that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 20 months. That's Anne, Saga, Joe has left, Helena, my colleague on the table there, and most of all, Hassan, who, without him, a lot of this commission's work would not have happened with the deep integrity that it has happened in. Where are you, Hassan? I can't see you. Here you are. He's been my partner in crime in a lot of this work, including the work of London Unseen. I think I mentioned at the beginning, and I don't think it's been explained, Saadi's involvement with the commission started with a round table that Hassan convened. From that small round table, Sadia and Everyday Muslim became part of a project called London Unseen, which was a collective of heritage practitioners coming together under one roof to tell these stories, to talk about these things, and this is what the event was part of last year. There are 30 plus practitioners on the list. So if you go on the CDPR page and look under London Unseen, you'll see practitioners from all walks of life. And that led then to Sadia applying for an Untold Stories grant, which came through the commission, and the result is today. So it's been a long but really meaningful journey to get to this stage, and I hope this won't be the end of that journey. So once more, thank you again to everyone, the AV team, Malcolm and his colleagues, Jackie, and the hospitality team who've been wonderful today, and for all our events that we do here, and our security team as well, who'll be kicking us out in about half an hour, and to all of you who've made today happen. Thank you for coming. Do keep spreading the word. Do keep doing the work that you all do in sharing these stories, in growing these stories. But please, as I mentioned earlier, do reach out to your elders with care, with integrity, and get those stories whilst we can. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. We've still got space here for another half an hour or so. Do go and look at the videos. Do go and comment on the memorial concepts, etc. The team needs your feedback. But yeah, there's still, I think, some refreshments left. So do enjoy the rest of your evening and get home safe. I've been told to stay here.
We can never let Chetna go without saying a proper thank you, and I don't know the words to use to say that, because without her and Hassan working as a team, we would not be here. We would not have the courage to be here. We wouldn't have the tools or the skills to know how to be here. So honestly, I don't know how to say thank you in any other words. I even asked Hassan to write me a few words, and he was like, yeah, we can't do it. We can't do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your travels. We know about your teeth and your
Okay, so those of you who know me know that I like my chai. So the mug says chalo chai time. So yeah, it is chai time. So, but yeah, thank you all so much. I'm not going far. I'm going to still be on the advisory board, I hope. So
definitely.
I hope to still be involved in some way, shape, or form. But thank you, everyone. Yeah, not often I'm
And just before we all go, please do leave your feedback at the back. There's a box for suggestions. If you're one of those people who can help us get to the next stage of our campaign for the memorial, let us know. Or if you know someone, stick their name in there so we can hassle them. But tell us what you think about the memorials. What do you want? This is your project, not ours. We're like following what you want. So we really need your feedback. We really need to have your input at this stage so we can make this memorial something that's for everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for the GLA. And thank you to Jasfir. I know he had a nightmare of journey getting here. I can't see him, but thank you to the whole GLA team for helping us put this together. AV, the catering team, just about everybody. They've made it so easy for us. They've made this like home now. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Please keep in touch and just tell us what you want. Thank you.